So we're in chapter 7, chapter 6. We've had for a couple of chapters no mention of Shmuel, even though this is called the book of Shmuel. And we had, of course, the incidents of the war between the Philistines and the Israelites, to which the Israelites not only lose some decisive battles, but they also, in one of the battles, lose the Ark of the Covenant. However, the Ark of the Covenant causes great ailments to the Philistines, and after a little while, they decided that it's time for them to. This is not theirs. This is God is showing his anger on the Philistines, and that they have to return it. And they not only return it, but they return it as well with offerings of atonement. And the last chapter of chapter 6, if you remember, we see that we see that as well. The Ark of the Covenant comes into Israel as well, and it comes into Beit Shemesh. And as the people of Beit Shemesh look at the Ark, and I guess it was in a disrespectful way, 70 people are struck, and that's considered a big hit, and the Aron is finally brought towards Kiryat Yearim. Okay, so now this is where we are. We are now in chapter 7. Vayavo anshei Kiryat Yearim, vayalu et Aron Adonai. The men of Kiryat Yearim came up and took hold and of the ark of the Lord. Vayaviuto el Beit Avinadav bagiva, and they brought it to the household of Avinadav, who happened to live on the hill, I guess, so he would overlook this area. Ve'et Elazar beno kideshu lishmor et Aron Adonai, and they consecrated him along with his son Elazar to be in charge of the safekeeping of the ark of the Lord. Now it's very interesting. If you notice, you almost see after the first pasuk there's already a pei, and after the second pasuk there's a samech. Again, a pei means patuach, which means it's closed. There's nothing written on that line. Samach is it's samuch. There's a like a tab. So it's not the sentences are not going to be written one after the other, but there's still going to be a tab in between, and it's going to continue. It's the way the text is formatted. So after pasuk number 2, in line in the column, if there was still space on that sentence, there would be a couple of spaces. If I'm not mistaken, 6 or 8 letters long. I don't remember what it is. I'm not a scribe, but there's a noticeable space before the next line continues. Okay, but it's on the same line. Vayhi miyom shevet Haron b'Kiryat Yearim, and it was after a couple of a little while after the Aron rested, was being guarded in Kiryat Yearim. Vayirbu ha'amim vayu esrim shana, and it was a long time, 20 years. Vayinahu kol Beit Yisrael acharei Adonai, and all the house of Israel yearned after the Lord. Look what we have right now. Vayomer Shmuel el kol Beit Yisrael lemor. Finally, we hear of Shmuel, who's been absent from the text, and Shmuel speaks to the entire people. Im bechol levavchem atem shavim el Adonai. If with all your heart you are returning to God, hasiru et Elohei hanechar mitochechem veha'ashtarot. Remove all your idols from you. So here we see that the Israelites actually strayed. Okay, and now there is this desire. After a while, they finally see the light, and they're moving back towards serving God again in the proper way. So he tells them, if the first stage is get rid of all your idols that are amongst you, and prepare your hearts and worship only him, and only then will he deliver you from the hands of Plishtim. So let me just explain to you that.
See?
Yes.
Yeah. It says that Samuel spoke to all the house of Israel. But we're now in a situation where different tribes are living all over Israel. So how would he be able to speak to everybody?
Great question. So, when we say El Kol Beit Yisrael, it's usually to all the elders or the people who will transmit. Certainly, especially in those days where, even if, assume the population was 3 or 4 million people. Okay, let's assume that, including kids, because you said everybody. He didn't say only to he didn't say only the males, not the female. Let's say he's speaking to everybody. Certainly, you put everybody in this huge valley or whatever might be a stadium where everybody's sitting, and he's yelling at the top of his lungs. Nobody is necessarily, everybody's hearing him. It's a matter of speech that his message was transmitted to everybody.
Got it.
So it can't physically be where he was speaking, and not only that, people who live all the way in the north, for them to come down to the south just to hear him and then go back home. In other words, his message was transmitted to everybody.
Good.
Okay?
Thank you. Yep.
So I just want to show everybody. Does everybody see the map?
Mm-hmm.
So you see where Kiryat Yearim is on the white map? We're right here.
Where? I don't see.
Do you see?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Do you see it around the circle? Kiryat Yearim. This is what we're taking. So first it came to Bet Shemesh, where Israelites were struck for looking at it improperly, and now it traveled to Kiryat Yearim. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, it is somewhere around in the big map. It's somewhere here. Okay. Does everybody see that?
Yep.
On the left-hand side, roughly, if you want to look at where it is. By the way, where I visited with the family, this is Ashdod, Ashkelon. I visited right there was the little town where I met with the family of the victims. Just to put it into place, Gaza is something like that here. So
your arrow is very small, but we see it.
Yeah,
okay.
it's about 20 kilometers, literally north due north of the Gaza Strip. That's where Mesuot Yitzchak is, where I was.
This is the Gaza Strip.
Okay, this roughly, that red little, okay, is and by the way, this little river the Wadi is still there. Actually divides the Gaza Strip in half. I'm gonna undo that. Okay, so we're roughly in how would you say it? Not quite in what is called Central Israel, but just south of I guess being Central Israel today. Okay, that's where Kiryat Yearim is. You see, it's just mind you, no, sorry, I apologize. This is literally in Central Israel because Jerusalem's considered center in terms of. I apologize. It is, so it's a little bit higher. It'll be right down here somewhere. Okay, I didn't notice Jerusalem here on the map. Perfect. Let me just get back to the text. So just a little pretext so you understand what's going on. Even though the war technically was over, the Philistines, of course, won. And what happens in war? Their territory and their grasp over territory is felt. And so the Philistines now are extending beyond that which is their borders. And part of that is there are Israelites that are being ruled or being harassed by the Philistines. So that is why there is this upturn, and they're crying out suddenly to Shmuel. So as a result of the war, even though they returned the ark, they are still holding on to certain property. So that is the pretext of what is happening with Shmuel and why they're crying out to Shmuel. Okay, everybody sees the text.
Mm-hmm.
So that is why also he's telling everyone, you know why you're suffering? Because you're simply not. Why are you asking for God's help when you're not following God? Obviously, God is is angry with you. So return your ways and get rid of all the foreign idols and gods that are in your midst, and only serve God. That's it. Vayasiru b'nei Israel et ha'be'alim ve'et ha'ashtarot. And so the Israelites removed all the Baalim and the Ashtarot, those idols, vayavdu et Adonai levado, and they started serving the Lord alone, only Lord. Vayomer Shmuel, and Shmuel says, and as an order, Kiftsu et kol Israel ha-mitzpata, assemble all Israel at Mitzpeh. And again, to your point, Peter, kol Israel is all the elders, the representatives of Israel. Va'etpalel ba'atchem el Adonai, and I will pray on behalf of you or for you from God. So I'll pray to God on your behalf for your well-being. Ve'kavtzu ha-mitzpata, and so they all assembled at Mitzpeh. Vayishavu maim, and they drew water. Vayishpechu lifnei Adonai, and they presented it, or they poured it out before the Lord. Anybody? What's the connection? What's this vayishavu maim? What's the water?
Mayim.
Yeah. We don't have what's the connection of that they brought water and they poured water. What's with it? What's the symbol? Anybody can come up with a symbolism?
Yeah, it's cleansing.
Yeah.
Excellent, Peter. It shows some sort of cleansing. It can also show as a sort of, don't forget, water is an unbelievably important commodity, and especially in that part of the world, water is scarce. It's not like there's so many lakes like we have here, so a little bit here, a little bit there doesn't make a difference. It shows that they're willing to give up everything for God. So it can be seen either physically as a washing or cleansing, or as that everything belongs to God. Even the sustenance, the basic things that we need, the water, which is the most important thing, they also give that up to God. Vayatsumu bayom hahu, they fast as well on that day. Vayomru sham chatanu l'Adonai, and they admit and they call out that we have sinned before the Lord. Vayishpot Shmuel et bnei Israel b'mitzpah, and Shmuel acted as the chieftain or as their head of the Israelites at Mitzpah. And here we have the same word as the entire books which we were reading was shoftim. So it's not only judges, which is sometimes it's not quite mistranslated, but the idea of the leaders being called shoftim is more that they, as I mentioned before, and they led the Israelites, and God through them judged them favorably. So they helped the Israelites being judged favorably before the Lord. It's not like they only sat, in court and judged. Vaishmehu plishtim, and the Philistines heard, Kihit kaptzu v'nei Israel hamitzpata, the Israelites gathered they have gathered at Mitzpeh. What is it? What anybody sees what's happening here? What do the Philistines take it as?
A potential gathering before a new round of fighting.
Excellent. Very good. So they see it as there's a gathering here, and perhaps this is a threat. Vaya'alu sarnei plishtim el Israel, and the lords of the Philistines marched out against the Israelites. Vaishmeu bnei Israel vayrum miplei plishtim, and the Israelites heard that now they are marching towards them, and they feared of the repercussions that the Philistines might take upon them. Vayomru v'nei Israel el Shmuel, and the Israelites cried out to Shmuel, Al tacharesh mimeno, please do not neglect us, do not be deaf from us, listen to us. Mizoak el Adonai Eloheinu, please do not listen to our what we need. Don't be deaf from our cries to the Lord. And if you hear us, and you pray to God, please pray to Him, and that He should save us from the hands of the Philistines. So Vaikach Shmuel talech chalav echad. Samuel takes talech chalav, a young lamb that is still weaning. That's what chalav is. In other words, he still hasn't broken away from his mother. Vaya alehu ola kalil ladonai, and he sacrificed it whole as a burnt offering to the Lord. Vayzak Shmuel el Adonai bad Israel, and Samuel cried out on behalf of the Israelites to God. Vayanehu Adonai, and God responded to Samuel. Vayishmuel ma'aleh ha'olah, and as Samuel was presenting the burnt offering, Uflishtim nigshu lamilchama beIsrael, and the Philistines were advancing in order with the intent of attacking the Israelites at war. Vayarem Adonai bekol gadol, and God struck them with this awesome, mighty noise, this thundering bang, so to speak. Bayomahu al plishtim vayhumem, and he hit them with this thundering voice, this boom that simply threw them all into confusion. Vaynakfu lifnei Israel, and they were routed, they were ransacked by the Israelites. They were Negev is literally, they were plagued, but they were dismantled by the Israelites. Vayitzu anshe Israel min hamitzpah, vayirdefu et plishtim, and the men of Israel went out and ran out and chased the Plishtim. Vayakum ad mitachat leveit kar, and they struck them all the way as far down as Beit Kar.
Yossi, could you do a little quick mapping and show us both Mitzpah and Beit Kar?
Yes, let me see. I believe it's on the map. I can't. Let me see if it's there. I'm not sure if it is. I didn't.
Or just approximately. I mean,
Mitzpah.
I see Beit Kar, yeah.
Mitzpah is there on the right hand side. Do you
Yeah, I
see?
see it. It's quite a
Let me see.
distance to Beit Kar from Mitzpah.
This is Mitzpah.
And there's Beit Kar. I see it. It's a long
And
distance.
hold on one second. Beit
Yep.
Kar is.
It's right here. I see it. It's there. It's south of Beit Shemesh, southeast of Beit Shemesh.
Okay, on which map?
On the white map, it's southeast of Beit Shemesh.
How come I'm not seeing it? Oh,
There, just below you.
Below, Yossi, and to the southeast.
so
It's there.
There it is.
Southwest of Bethlehem and southeast of Beit Shemesh.
And that's
You're
Beit
on-
Sur. That's not Beit
sorry.
Kar. That's not Beit Kar. That's Beit Sur.
So
Yeah,
Oh,
we were looking
Beit
at.
Kar isn't there on the white map then.
Yeah, I'm not sure where. I can't. I'm not sure where it is, but it's by the text, the way that they're speaking. It's, in other words, the idea is that they're running away. How far? I'll try to see if I can find another one, but I'm not sure where. I would guess to say that it would be from Mitzpeh all the way down towards, pointing that way, that they're heading home. They're going. They're backtracking.
Towards back to their own territory.
Yeah, I mean, that would be normal. That you wouldn't be going back into where, into enemy territory. You're trying to get back home for wherever you have numbers. So that's a normal action. So I'm assuming they're going that way, but along that way, it's discernible distance.
Yeah,
that,
obviously, because
Yeah.
they're already a distance from the border with
Yeah.
the Philistines. Yeah.
right. So from Kiryat Yarim, they gather. The story takes place even more north, and now the Philistines, they feel all empowered. Still remember, as I mentioned, that their reign is now a little bit spread out further into the Israeli territory. Now they're feeling empowered to go and attack them at Mitzpeh, and of course, God creates this confusion within the camp or within the army of these leaders of the Philistines, and the Israelites now are chasing them down and out. So let's continue. Here's my share. Perfect. All right, so they're being chased. Vaikach Shmuel Even Achat, and Samuel takes this stone, this monument. Vayasem bein hamitzpah uvein hashen, and he places it between Mitzpah and Shen. Vaikra et shema Even Ha'azer, and he calls it Even Ha'azer, or the stone of help. In other words, it's nothing to do that the stone helped them, but it is symbolic of God's help in defeating the Philistines. Vayomar Adhena Azaranu Adonai, and he says for here, the Lord has helped us up to now. Okay, Adhena, up until now, God has always been with us. So it's an ode and a hint to the Israelites to do what?
To follow the ways of God.
To follow the ways of God, because he tells them, you've gotten until today, until this place. You've reached this point because God wants you to reach this point. When you don't follow God, what happens? The Philistines, outside forces, will subjugate you. When you follow God, God will do all in his power to make sure that you are safe. Vaikanu haplishtim velo yasfu od lavo bigvul Israel. The Philistines were humbled. They waved their white flags. Velo yasfu od lavo bigvul Israel, and they no longer invaded the territory of Israel again. Vatehi yad Adonai baplishtim kol yemei Shmuel, and God's hand was on the Philistines throughout Samuel's life. Vatashovna, listen to this. Vatashovna he'arim asher lakchu Plishtim me'et Israel leIsrael. The cities, the towns which the Philistines had taken from Israel, returned back to Israel. Me'ekron ve'adgat ve'ed gevulan hitzil Israel miad Plishtim. And so, from Ekron to Gath were restored to Israel. In other words, all the towns, the territory that they had lost had been returned, and also their surroundings. God saved or gave recovered into the hands of the Israel from the Philistines. Vahi shalom bein Israel uvein ha'emori. And as a result of this strong hand, the Israelites were able to actually make peace with another neighbor, the Amorites, as a result of them seeing the potential of loss for them, and they realized that it's a much better to be in peace than to be at war with the Israelites. I don't know about you, but when I read Vatoshavna He'arim, and I don't know if you're reading in the news now about all. It started when the last day I was in Israel. There were people starting to go back to Sderot, and it was to see it on TV. It was very, very gut wrenching in terms of the joy, but at the same time I think I don't even know, because I don't know the feelings that they had, but people were not only beyond reluctant, but they're almost reliving it again, whether they had a post-traumatic experience going back. It rekindled different emotions in them. It was a hard thing to watch, but also beautiful thing to watch, that they're moving, moving onwards. And I saw one couple, beautiful religious couple, being interviewed, and the mother said, I lost the friends that live on both sides of my house, no longer exist. I'm going to go home to no neighbors. But it's not going back to no neighbors. I know what happened to those neighbors, but she said, but if we don't go back, then the entire neighborhood has been decimated. So it is up to us to make sure that we owe it to our neighbors to make sure that we do go back. As difficult as it is for us, they ultimately gave the most, the highest of prices they paid for being there. the least we can do is go back and show them support. So it was a really beautiful ode to the victims as well. And so here we see, not only do they go back, but it's with a hard hand. This is the neighborhood that as I mentioned before, that Israel lives in. It's a hard hand, and any show of weakness, and other people around don't respect you, or they see it as an opportunity, to in our case it's to kill you, to get rid of you. But here we see that because of the strong hand which God was putting on the Philistines, the Israelites are able to create peace with another one of their neighbors, with the Amorites. Vaishpot Shmuel et Israel kol yemei chayav, and Samuel judged Israel as long as he lived. Again, it's not necessarily ishpot as in judge, but he led the Israelites throughout the rest of his life. Vehalach midei shana b'shana, v'savav Beit El, v'hagilgal, v'hamitzpah. And this was his round. He used to go from Bethel to Gilgal to Mitzpeh. V'shafat et Israel et kol hamekomot ha'ele, and he led and he judged. He ensured that there was proper living. That is really maybe the best way of translating it. That he was a role model in all these places. Ut shuvato haramata kisham beito, and he would return back to Ramah, for that is where his house was. V'sham shafat et Israel, and there he also judged Israel. And again, there he also was an example, or was a leader, how to live to all those who lived there, to Israel. Va'ivin sham mizbeach l'Adonai, and there he built an altar to the Lord. So this is really a pretext of, remember that there is no yet Beit Mikdash. The Mishkan is really not operating in the same way as it did in the desert. Clearly, things are the most important part of the Beit HaMikdash or the Mishkan is the Ark, and it's still not back in its place. So certainly was not acting in its in the same role. But this is a pretext to what is going to happen later on with David, and later on really conclude with Shlomo in terms of building a permanent religious head, so to speak, resting place for all of the Mishkan and all of its. And we just read about it in the last couple of Parshiot, of all the vessels that were in the Beit HaMikdash, the Ark, the menorah, the different new altars, etc., that were the key in the performance of all our rituals, at least those days, and this is really built up to it. Any questions?
Yossi, I have
Yes,
a question about verse 14. The
verse
towns
14.
which the Philistines had taken from Israel
Yeah.
to Gath. So now, and then Israel, recovered those territory. The people in the town, were they Israelites?
So interesting. If you remember what we remember, at Gath, who was from Gath? Gath was Goliath was from there. So excellent question. If we look at from the book of Yehoshua, all that land was supposed to be eventually the land of Israel, and it's not all. It's not necessarily a historical book of what when we read the Torah, or when we read. Yes, there is of course a historical component to it, but it's not there to tell us on day 1 this is what happened, day 2 this was happened, day 3 this was happened, day 4. It's a little bit of that, but it's more in terms of the lessons overall that it teaches. Understand? So, and then it highlights very important occurrences that happen. As I mentioned as well, there are other Nevi'im that existed, but we know nothing of them, or they're not part of the canonized text, because their influence was very regional, and was not really from generation to generation the lesson that we learn. We almost kind of there's a blueprint of not following God's ways, being punished, and they need a true leader to help them, and this is what happens. The more novel part of the Nevi'im starts coming shortly. As soon as Shaul starts being the king, we see more stories of historical kind of like an advancement of Israel, like kind of like historical events that happen. So going back to your question, from the book of Joshua, the territories, the Plishtim would have been pushed out. Now they gather enough strength, and they actually come back and reoccupy the lands that they were on beforehand, that were promised to Israel by God, years ahead, and we will claim. And now, when Israel again has the upper hand because they're following God's ways, they are able to push the Philistines back out and take the cities that the Philistines moved back into. So yes and no. In other words, yes, don't forget, before the Israelites made it to Eretz Canaan, yes, the Philistines were there. But those were amongst the nations that God told them that they must wipe out. But they were only able to wipe them out up to a certain point before going astray. Once they go astray, God is no longer with them. They retreat because the Philistines are stronger. But now that they are back on track with following God's ways, what happens? They have the upper hand, and now they're pushing the Philistines back out. So it's kind of like a back and forth, so to speak. But now they are pushing. The point here is that they're even pushing to the cities that the Philistines felt comfortable and started living in as their own. That is how strong that they felt in terms of the advancement of with the help of God. And I think that's the point that the text wants to make, that Shmuel was saying, in terms of God has got us up until this day with this advancement once again. Why? We couldn't do it yesterday. Why today? Because now you're following God again. Excellent question, Henry.
I asked the question. It sounds very naive, or I don't know what the word is, but I'm just looking at this Bible and I'm thinking that God is omnipotent and everything revolves around God, all these stories, all this history, and not only the Jewish religion, but it all focuses and centers on the idea of God. And I was thinking that, what if we didn't have that? Where would we be?
That's the covenantal. That's the whole point of the Bible, right? That's without that, then it's the Bible would not be the Bible. It would be we would not be in existence either. We might be walking this earth, but not in the same capacity. We would not be Jews. We would not be Israelites or whatever it might be. We would be another tribe doing whatever we would have been doing, just as the people around us. So the Torah differentiated us. It came about to separate us, not necessarily only physically, but spiritually and socially, from to bring us a particular order. But that required from us a particular mode of behavior. The moment that we did not behave in the proper way, and that is the relationship which we had with God, then that brought us trying times. And I'm going to say this as not indirect, but this is why also you have religious people who, when you ask them, when something bad happens, and they say, yeah, that's because we're not following God's ways, and you say, what do you mean? Because of that, God would. This is the pattern that when you study and with certain pattern, that is the way that they view things. So it's a very It's a very easy way of saying, yes, when we misbehave, it's also a very simple explanation. When we misbehave, when we don't follow God's ways, then yes, God will punish us. Well, God will not be with us. Like if you want to use, and I you look at I'll use as an example. You have it. You go into contract with a security guard. Your attaché, right? Like if you're somebody that you pay somebody, they protect you from a mob, or they protect you from when you're going out on on tour to speak to something, and somebody wants to get you to push into you to get close to you. They keep everybody away. If you're not paying them, the guy's not showing up to the job. The people will get to you and harass you or whatever might be. So in other words, we have a covenantal agreement with God. Very simple. We follow
Well,
certain things.
I see this as the Haredim, and they feel that because they're studying all the time, they can't serve in the army. And even if they want to, if they study almost day and night, then they cannot. And I think they really believe that they're following God's will.
So the some do see it that way, but the challenge with the with the non-religious in Israel and the Haredim is that some Haredim don't want to go to the army because they don't see it as they don't see Israel as the ultimate Israel, and therefore they're not going to put their life out on the same way that they didn't join the American army or Canadian army, because although we'll pay taxes, etc., we're here as guests. This is not really our country per se. If they're going to put out, it's where you believe it's part of your history. They see it as, yes, Israel's part of our history, but not in this format. In other words, until it doesn't become a religious state where the laws of halakha are the laws of the land, then it's still kind of, it might be a Jewish or a run place, but it could have been, for all intents and purposes, it could have been anywhere else in the world. And so they don't see it as their duty to serve that. And that is really so where the Chilonim are hurt, they say, oh, but you accept the welfare checks from this government who is an Israeli. That's okay. You don't turn your blind eye to that from the welfare check that allows you to do it. But to protect that society that gives you or your child or your future generations that welfare check, that you have no interest in doing. So I totally agree with I have to say with the Chilonim, because if we had rules here in Canada that conscription, that we had no choice, and if we weren't under threat and you wanted to remain in Canada, then yes, you physically made it a point to be this to be your country. But because we have choice, we most of us don't go to the army. But we saw it in World War II. There was an abnormally high percentage of Jews joining the army. Whether they saw combat or not is irrelevant, but just the fact that they felt the need to support where they lived is an incredible.
It's always been a big discussion, but now it's really a very big discussion with the Chilonim because of October 7th.
When I left Israel, this is my sad part to report, Philip, was I saw a very big change from the first day that I landed and the last day when I was leaving. And that's only 8 days. It's not like I was there for months or at end and I saw a huge change. There was already again this, the right and the left and the non-religious versus the religious. It started bubbling again. And I just saw literally somebody from the shul sent me a beautiful, beautiful video about, it's time that we learn our lesson in terms of sinat chinam, of this deep division that we have, this hatred for no reason, because we might not see eye to eye, or we may have different views or different approaches to things, and it gets so heated. And it actually doesn't come from the religious side, believe it or not. It actually comes from the non-religious, who are all the time, you're religious and you have to do it, you're religious, and it's that will that will eventually create a response. But I didn't see any, where the religious are saying one thing against and they're saying one thing against. It's almost like it's coming from one, it's a wave, and until finally the religious answer them, and it's like relentless. It's that was a hard thing to witness, which is very difficult to see. But it's amazing how you see the religious people wanting to embrace even those that are questioning their belief or their right to be in Israel. I can't explain it more. But statistically, in the army, an unprecedented number of casualties, like in the army, when you hear every day, is actually religious Jews. There might not be Haredi, but the conscription, those volunteers that came to the army and the people who were called up, unbelievably high percentages are observant Jews, and they're there with tzitzis, hanging out, carrying their gun and boots. But the Chilonim don't look at it. It's a very sad reality that they kind of turn a blind. They're just looking at the religious who are not going. It's different, like the other religious people who are joining are not really that religious. It's only the Haredim that don't want to join God forbid we get to the same point where we were before, on October 7th, where we had such deep divisions. That is, again, very scary proposition, very scary. But thank you, Tamara. Any other points, questions?
I had a little question.
Yes, Esther.
The very religious people, Haredim, are they not waiting for the Messiah to come before they recognize Israel as an actual state that they would go and fight for? Or is the Messiah that they're waiting for a state of time rather than a specific person?
So I will answer that by what I believe, because I certainly don't have the notes. I don't think anybody has the know-how. People might theorize about what Mashiach might be, who will be. We know even in our days we have different sects of Jews who believe that their Rebbe is the Mashiach, and etc. Aside from that, it's not so much. By the time Mashiach comes, there will be no war. That's the whole point of Mashiach. There will be also not necessarily that everybody will be Jews. That's not the way that I see it. It says when you read Aleinu, next time you read Aleinu, read it in the English if you're not so proficient in the Hebrew, just so you understand that prayer. And that is, by the way, one of the prayers that you're not subjected by how many times you're saying it. You can say that prayer as many times as you are. You come to Shul and you hear Aleinu, you can say Aleinu with God's name. The Shmona Esrei, for instance, the moment you say Shmona Esrei in the morning, it's done. You cannot say it again. If you missed Shmona Esrei in the morning, you can't make another one and say, okay, I'll still say 3. No, it's done. The Aleinu, you can go wherever you want. You can go from minyan to minyan to minyan to minyan to minyan to minyan to minyan, and you can say Aleinu as many times as you want for this particular reason, because it has that messianic viewpoint of what will happen once. In that day, when in the final day, God will be revealed to everyone, and everybody will finally know. And the moment that everybody knows, there will be no more war in terms of you know, the religious wars like we have now of this guy against that one, that religion against this religion. What Israel right now is experiencing is a religious war. Do not be fooled by territory. It has nothing to do with territory. When the terrorists were going through the towns, they were yelling death to the Jews, not death to Israelis. And they didn't even care who it was. It's an ideological war. Those are the ones who are trying to legitimize the other side, and they realize it's not a good thing to say that it's a religious war, saying it's an occupational thing. It has nothing to do with occupation. Just follow the words. Go look at the videos that the Hamas is saying. It has nothing to do with this is our land. It's death to Jews, death to Jews. That's what it is. It's an ideological war. But the moment that there's no more ideological differences, then that's it. That's ultimate peace in terms of recognizing that there is only one super being, so to speak, one God above us all. What are we? So there are many different theories in terms of, does that mean we'll live forever? Where is Tchiyat HaMeitim come in? The resurrection of the dead. That stuff I can't answer. I'm definitely not an expert on that. And there's many, theories. What happens if you live then? Does Abraham Avinu, who lived, 6,000 years, what happens? You never experienced death. It's many complicated things. But with regards to what you're saying about the Hasidim, everybody I think is waiting for Yemot HaMashiach. And once Yemot HaMashiach come, they're not going to be conscripted into the army because there'll be no need to be in the army, God willing. What they're waiting for is a religious state. In other words, they believe that Israel is only technically Israel, or a Jewish state is only a Jewish state if it is religiously administered or religiously run. So that's really what they're waiting for. Maybe when that happens, that's when they're going to join the army. I will tell you, I'm not sure even if that happens that they would join the army, but that's another story.
Yes,
I'm not gonna hold my breath.
just to change the
I'm
subject.
sorry, I have to leave. I'm flying.
Okay.
And I won't be back next Monday, so I'll miss all of you.
Okay, Miriam, where are you going?
San Francisco.
Beautiful. Safe trip across the
Thank you.
continent. And know that I'll be posting it on YouTube. So if you want to catch up on any chapters, you can always go up on the Shar YouTube channel, and you can you'll be able to catch all the chapters.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Be
Just
safe.
say,
Thank
I
you.
wish you happy
Miriam,
birthday
I'm going to call you, and I
tomorrow.
have someone to stay with you at the hotel when you come. So,
I'll speak to you. Okay.
bye.
Yes, Henry.
Nice to see you, Mir. It's
Thank
Yochanan.
you.
Yossi, I'd like to wish you happy birthday. Tomorrow's your birthday.
That's
Thank
right.
Thank you. I hope I don't look any older, but
You're getting
Thank
younger every day.
Yes,
thank
you
you,
look
Henry,
like
so
you're
much. Thank you. I appreciate that. That is wonderful. Thank
Happy,
you, everyone.
healthy birthday.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you to everybody. That's wonderful.
Safe trip, Miriam.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Philip.
Okay.
Yes, you're never late.
Shavua tov.
Shavuot tov, everybody. Thank you, Farla. Thank you, everyone.
Miriam ended it. Fine.
Bye, Cindy, and bye, Yochanan and Clara. So nice to have you with us. Any last? Everybody okay? Any last? So I'm gonna close off.
Yeah. Anyway,